Welcome back to Bonanza Disc Golf and to another episode of Project 100, where we take a look at everything that I'm doing during this off season to move from an MA1 player to an MPO player who tries to get on the Pro Tour. And my off season training has been a lot of forehand recently, but I've also averaged over 100 putts a day. And when I say over, I mean probably like 101, but I've been putting a lot and I've been seeing the improvement, and I want to talk about how you too can become a very confident pro level Circle 1 putter and a little bit about Circle 2-2. In today's video, I want to break down essentially everything that I think about putting, why I straddle putt versus inline putt, how to get more spin, how to get more power, whether you should jump or step or just straight up putt. But here's a very big disclaimer. I'm not a coach and I don't want to be a form coach. I just want to play at the highest level disc golf that I possibly can. And these are things that I have seen in my own game or that I've watched videos from pros on what they do, implementing it into my game and seeing what works for me. So I want to put that disclaimer out there. Two major things. The first thing is that Project 100 for me has been a little slowed down this week. If you didn't know, the basic tenets of Project 100 is to do a non-disc golf workout, a field work session, and average 100 putts a day. Now I have continued to average my 100 putts a day, even yesterday doing them on the beach in some crosswind. But the reason that I feel confident making this video right now is 2 of my last 4 tournament rounds, I've putt 100% inside the circle and about 20 to 40 to 50% in Circle 2. And I just played around here today where I putt 100% inside the circle. I'm feeling very confident as a putter with the things that I'm going to talk about in this video. But for me, I have not done my fieldwork session this week, and unlike other weeks where I say, if you comment tomorrow, have you done your fieldwork session, I'll give something away. This week, I am not going to be able to, but I am planning on putting in 2 fieldwork sessions next week. I did do my non-disc golf workout and my putting, so I feel overall pretty good. But here's a really quick update as well for just this month of December. 2 major things, one of them that I really have to thank you guys and apologize for, but one, I understand the balance between training to go pro in disc golf and being a professional content creator here. And right now, the balance is having necessarily to swing towards the professional content creator side of things, because this is what's paying me right now. And this is what's going to allow for me to have the time to train even more on the Pro Tour and hopefully eventually hire some people to help me film and edit content so that I can continue putting out more content than anybody else in disc golf, even while I'm playing at the highest levels in disc golf. So I'm gonna continue to make sure that I do some field work, do my putting and do all of that, but it's not gonna be my main focus this month, especially as I'm doing double videos for the first week and a half of this month. But if you think my progress is going a little slow, it's because it is, and that's okay for now. The second thing that I wanted to talk with you guys about real quick is that in my video a couple days back, I talked about my subscriber goals for December, saying that 15,000 was the minimum, 20,000 was the top end of what my subscriber goals look like. And to be honest, I think we can get there because this, I'm just gonna show you some analytics real quick. This is my returning viewers in the past 28 days. So if literally only 2/3 of those people were subscribed, we would hit the 20,000 goal. But in that, I gave some like incentives that I thought would be fun because like, oh, you get to see me do silly things for these things, but I tied them all to tournaments at the MPO and sometimes Pro Tour level, which a lot of you guys called out as was a really bad idea. I was thinking that, oh, that'd be a fun goal that you guys might be interested in seeing, but I'm really grateful for the audience that I've created here and for you guys and the journey that you want to see me go on, because I thought that that would be incentivizing, but it was actually de-incentivizing for a lot of people. They're like, I would unsubscribe just so you didn't have to do this. So I thought of a much better idea for what the subscriber goal is. And we're still going to hit those milestones, but for every subscriber over 15,000 that we end the year at, I'm going to do a marathon live stream, and I'll have to make 1 putt for every subscriber over 15,000 that we have. During this live stream, I'll actually be able to still do all those crazy things like the food challenges, like wearing stupid stuff, and tons of Q&As. Hopefully maybe special guests. I have to figure out all the details of that. So get me to 20,000, get me to 30,000. I'll have to make 15,000 putts because that makes a lot more sense. And I really appreciate you guys who said that that was a bad idea, because it definitely was. There will also be other incentives throughout December to add putts to that goal, which essentially just adds time to that live stream. And if by midnight Central Time, we have 9,000 subscribers on the channel, I'm going to add 900 putts no matter what into the live stream total. And if you have any suggestions for what to do on that live stream to make it even more interesting for you guys, please let me know. It's gonna be a lot of putts. Speaking of which, let's get into everything that I think about putting before it rains. And hopefully this video isn't forever long because I got a lot of thoughts. Also, I asked on my Instagram, go follow me over there, just some questions that people had about putting. And if I haven't answered them in the video, by the end of it, I'm gonna go through those questions and just answer them rapid fire. I know most of us probably understand this, but in disc golf, when you putt, you're trying to have the simplest flight path from you into the basket. And remember, I'm not a coach, but this is my understanding of the mechanics of a disc golf putt and how I think about them when I'm lining something up. A lot of times when you start to think about a putt, you start with the upper body because your arm is doing a lot of the work. And you totally can. Like, I'm not gonna move my lower body. I'm like locking on my knees. Like, you can putt like that. It's not impossible and also not very accurate. So instead of starting with the upper body, you really need to think about starting with the lower body. If anything, just being in an athletic position, because that gives you more on the balls of your feet. I had to move baskets, there's more people over there. I also realized that I'm doing this from a straddle. It's the same thing. This is still an athletic position to be down like this. You don't see anybody not with their knees bent. So first thing is just make sure your knees get bent, and you'll figure out the bottom half as we go along. The second thing, moving up your body, actually to me isn't even your arm, it's your chest, because where your chest height is, as you move this hinge with your shoulder here, it's normally going to go where your chest is. So if you go straight here, it's gonna be higher than if your chest is face down here. And then you're gonna have to correct with your arm, which adds something to your throw, which makes it less predictable. And for putting, you wanna be the most consistent possible, so having less variables in your putt is very, very important. So chest, normally I like to keep it pretty high, like not like puffed out, but like just not hunched over. Make sure my shoulders are back. Sometimes I even think about kind of engaging my shoulders back here, especially when I'm really tired, just to make sure I'm up. Okay, engage that, and then I relax everything, go down and come back up. And that's where the next 3 or 4 levers are. One of them is your shoulder, but it really isn't doing anything except for this motion, forward and backwards, no matter what, forward and backwards. Second one is gonna be your elbow. Some people putt with a very straight elbow, like this, down and up. A lot of times that's a push putt, where they're going down and then they're using a lot of their lower body to accelerate the disc without a lot of spin. Because you're gonna be able to get spin in 3 different ways, which are all the next 3 levers in your putt. The first is your elbow, because if you think about it here, to extend your elbow, you're not really going like this. This isn't the motion, it's more in and out. And so right here, it's going from out here to straight, and it's going laterally this way, which when a disc moves forward, but it's forced to go laterally, that spins the disc. Like even just this, you see the disc starts right here. I'm not changing anything about my grip or anything, but when I go back, when I come down and go forward, the disc is spinning. Ever so slightly, but that spin does matter. Second is gonna be the wrist. Especially when I'm tired, what I make sure that I do is cock my wrist before I bring the disc down. That way, it's one less variable again. I don't have to remember to, oh, I need to cock the wrist and go backwards and forwards with my wrist. I just have to make sure it's cocked, go down, and bring the disc forwards. And that, again, is another way to spin the disc. The third way is with your grip. So this kind of brings us into grip, but first I'll talk about how it spins the disc. Essentially, these fingers down here need to be bent a little bit. They can't be like fully straight, because then you're not gonna get any spin, because if you open your hand, it spins like that a little bit, but if they're bent right here and you just open your hand, the disc is gonna spin a lot more, because opening your hand releases that, and that is a spinning motion as well. So those are the 3 ways that I see to get spin. So if you're thinking about needing to get more spin in your putt, it's just from what I've understood and thought about, a lot of times it can be your elbow. Maybe your elbow is staying straight like this, and that's why one of my main tips in my Project 100 Facebook group and over on Instagram was when I realized I was able to make 25 to 40 foot standstill putts just by making sure that my arm is always fully extended, because that is a little bit more power. It brings me a little closer to the basket. It also helps me to make sure I'm going forward towards the basket, which makes it more accurate, and it adds some spin to the putt. And the more spin that's on your putt, the longer it's gonna be able to stay in the air. So let's talk about grip now real quick. When I first started playing disc golf, I saw a lot of people had this grip right here, where their finger is on the front, and that way, when they open their hand, it kind of guides off that front finger towards the basket. That can definitely be good, but I got baby hands. Everybody on this channel knows I got baby hands. And so I was doing that, and it just kept sliding out early because I'm not having a good grip between my thumb and whatever point is resting kind of on the rim. So I wasn't able to really pinch it, so it always come out pretty early, and I couldn't get a lot of power. So I switched to this grip, where I have kind of my last knuckle right here is on the rim right there. All my fingers are still fanned right there, and that helps me to still have it be very guided, but I'm able to get spin compared to, like even that, like that was fine, but it felt so much more uncomfortable because I got little baby hands. The one last grip that I see a lot of people do, and I'm sure there's other grips, let me know if I forgot yours, but is this one where they have their finger on top here. And this is a way to generate a little more tension between this finger and the thumb, which can definitely get you more spin. Like that's a very spinny grip. For me though, I just find that I get enough spin using all 3 of these levers that I've already talked about instead of having to do this, because to me that's a little more uncomfortable, it's a little more strain in my hands. And one of the main things that I'm gonna talk about in like a tournament setting for putting well is relaxing your body. And this is not a very relaxed position for me, whereas this is. And being fully relaxed helps me to get the most out of all of this. None of my muscles are tense, and instead everything can hinge correctly to get the most spin into the disc. Now we need to talk about how I actually started putting and what I do now that's actually different. So I started putting as an inline putter, and I actually won a tournament as an inline putter. You putt in a staggered stance right here, facing the basket. You bring the disc down and forward in this motion, and that actually generates a lot more power, in my opinion, than a straddle putt can more easily. So that's why it's easier to go from 25 feet. But I haven't practiced this in a while. I need to actually continue practicing just in case I have to putt like this sometimes. But there were a couple tweaks that I made to that putt to help me win that first tournament. The first was I was putting very straight on like this, very straight, and this foot was pointed straight ahead of my target. And I realized I kept missing right, and I didn't exactly know why. So when I bring this up, I'm missing a little bit right. What I noticed is when I shifted this foot and actually just angled it a little bit left, this is just what I did. I don't know why this worked, but for me, that helped my body right here, my hips, become in line with the motion that since I now realize that. Since my hips are faced this way, when I bring that disc fully forward, my whole core rotates slightly and it helps keep me in line with the basket there. All right, I guess that's why that works, at least I think. That really worked for me, so if you're missing right, that was one of the questions on Instagram, that might help you. The thing that really helped me though, was I noticed that I had so much more variance missing right and left when I inline putt. And then when I started straddle putting and practicing that, I noticed that I was much more squared up with the basket and much more confident that I would be able to hit it on target, and mitigating the miss of right to left and just having to worry about the height of the putt was really helpful for me. Doesn't mean I still don't miss right, doesn't mean I still don't miss left, but I understand why I do that more, and a lot of times just because I'm lazy and not actually focusing on going forward with my putt. Instead, I just make sure that I bring my arm up, and that doesn't do anything. You have to make sure that you go forward towards the basket. Those are my main thoughts on straddle versus inline. Now let's talk about spin versus push putting versus what I kind of do, which is like a spush putting. I don't know, it's not an actual word, but we're gonna act like it is. So with a push putt, I'm just gonna stay here close so we don't have to get too far. A push putt has most of the power generated from your legs. You don't really use your elbow too much as a hinge, and instead you just go down and up. You still have to spin the disc a little bit. I don't really know how to push putt anymore very well. And a lot of times people call this a pitch putt as well, because the further back you get, since you're using less spin, the disc isn't staying in the air quite as long. So you'll see push putters have their putts go above the basket and then come back down into the basket. Spin putting is a little bit different. You much less use your legs. You don't really need to use them. And you basically bring the disc into you, closer to your stomach, or like, yeah, right around here, and then spin it into the chains, using a lot more of your wrist and a little bit more of your elbow. That's why you bring it into you, because that hinges that elbow a little bit more, and that helps you to generate a little bit more spin with the lateral movement of your elbow. Probably, I don't freaking know, I'm not a coach. The last type of putt, which is what I do, which is what I've noticed most people on tour doing, is a kind of mixture of both of them, because they both have their merits. With a spin putt, it can be a little bit less accurate, and if you miss, you're gonna go way far past the basket. With a push putt, you really have to get the height right. So to mitigate all of that, a lot of people are moving towards spush putting, or basically just a mixture. I don't know, it's just kind of what a lot of people do. It's what I do, where I make sure that I am engaging my legs with my putt and going down to generate some power, but I'm also generating a lot of spin. And that would be my recommendation to you, is figuring out the balance for you of spin and power. Power, in my estimation, is generated from the legs going down and up, or in an inline, going down and back up. For me, I like to keep it a little bit tighter in here, and to really focus on keeping my wrist cocked, focusing on the spin, getting my aim point, making sure that I'm punching into the basket, trying to throw slightly through the basket. So that will bring us into talking about nose angle and disc angle, I guess. Nose angle is going to be super important when you're thinking about putting in the wind, as well as disc angle. Both of these are, but the nose angle on your putt is how you're releasing it out of your hand. What I found, actually, I was practicing putting today and trying to think through a little bit more of what I was going to talk about during my 100 putts, and I was realizing that when I come up on my putt, normally I like to release it flat, like right here. Actually, that's even slightly nose down. So I need to continue working on that, is releasing it either flat, or honestly for me, slightly nose up, because my miss tends to be down. But the more that I can release flat, or at least within like 1 or 2 degrees of flat, the better, especially when I aim towards the middle of the basket, because then if I release slightly nose down, it'll still go in. If I release slightly nose up, it'll still go in. But if I really miss my nose angle, that's where we'll start to have problems, which is one other way that you can mitigate missing more putts, is by having a correct aim point. But nose angle is also especially important to think about in the wind, because those little variances in degrees in a headwind, if your nose is slightly down from where it needs to be, it's actually just gonna go into the ground. It's not, your headwind putt isn't gonna lift. So if you're ever like, why the heck isn't the headwind lifting my putt? Probably have it slightly nose down, because the wind is hitting it and just diving it into the ground. Same thing with two nose up, is if it's nose up like this, then it's just gonna go straight over the basket. So if you keep your putt flat, the flatter your putt, the less the wind is going to be able to affect it. Similarly, not just with the nose angle, also with how it is putt, whether it's flat, or slightly hyzer. I don't know anybody who actually has like an anhyzer putt. There probably are some, and you guys will probably be able to tell me. But all three of these angles are important things to learn because there might be things that are obstructing the basket. But it's also important to know with the wind. For instance, if you watch my last tournament vlog, there was one time where I was straddling around a tree, and I prefer to straddle to the right of something to make the putt. However, the wind was kind of coming this way across my shoulder as a crosswind. So if I putt that way, I would have to aim almost in the cage and low, because the wind, since I'm having to putt around something, I'm having to put it on a little bit of hyzer, and the wind is going to take it way into the air. So I changed that and started to straddle around the other side and did a much less comfortable putt for myself, which is a slight anhyzer putt, because then the angle of the disc is pushing against the wind, keeping it straighter. This is things that you might not have to worry about right now, especially if you're just trying to like make more putts from 15 or 20 feet. But that brings me into the next two things real fast, which essentially just comes down to how to make more inside the circle putts. We're gonna go to, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 feet here. And what it honestly comes down to is practice. You need to practice more. And the reason I haven't said that you need to practice more up until now is because I'm sure if you've listened to anything about putting or watched anything about putting, people have told you to practice more. And you know that. But we need to figure out what to practice. Because if you're missing everything from here and it's going nose down into the cage or hitting the band, wow, that was pretty accurate, heck yeah. I didn't think I was gonna be able to do that first try, but maybe now, as you understand a little bit about nose angle and you can think, how do you release it? And to release on a different nose angle is all about how your wrist opens up to the basket. Because if you open up high like this, you can see kind of my wrist is a little bit higher than where my arm is. If your arm is going straight towards the basket because your chest is in a neutral position, it's chest up, and your arm is getting fully extended out, and your wrist is loose, so you're not like going up or down, you're going to release your disc straight. If your wrist is up, it's gonna release nose up. If it's down, it's gonna release nose down. Same thing with your chest. If your chest is slightly down, you're gonna release nose down. If your chest is slightly up, you're gonna release nose up. These are all things that you can use to your advantage on putting at elevation or into different winds. But for now, let's really focus on if I'm at 15 feet and I'm missing low, okay, now maybe I just need to make sure that my chest is up. And my chest is up and I'm squared up at the basket. Pick my aim point, and now I hit the middle of the cage. If I'm high, maybe I need to think about, I'm trying to release the disc above my shoulders. So I need to just, instead of releasing the disc up, I need to release the disc forward. So I'm not trying to come from down here and go up, I'm trying to come from down here and go forward. And then you hit the center of the chains. At that point, it does become muscle memory. And one thing to talk about that is I have heard so many people, probably a lot of people, say that like you shouldn't practice putt with a bunch of putters, or you need to reset every time that you putt. And when I got into disc golf, I did that for a little bit, and I still think that that's a good thing to do, is like to practice how you will play. However, I realized as someone who was getting good relatively fast and wanting to play on the pro tour, that I just needed reps. Like you just sometimes need to get the reps in. People who have been playing for a lot longer than me have so many more reps putting on the putting green. So if I want to get good at putting from 25 feet, of course, take my mini, I can place my mini down, I can grab my putter, set up, do my whole routine. But what I honestly do, even now, as I'm learning to putt, is I will take 3 or 4 putters in my hand and just iron out the movement of putting, because I don't have the 20,000 reps of putting. And if things like that happen and I start to miss multiple times, that's when I know, okay, reset a little bit, calm down, really focus on being loose everywhere, because the looser I am, the better I putt. I'm able to get more spin on the disc because my muscles aren't tensing anywhere, and I'm able to use all those levers correctly. So I think that there's a place for taking 10 putters, just setting them up and just repping them out, not worrying about what your routine looks like, not even worrying about how many in your hands. Because for me, if I have 3, 4, 5 in my hands and 1 that I'm putting versus just 1 that I'm putting, versus when I'm in tournaments, I only ever take 1. I almost never only have 1 in my hand when I practice putt, but that still doesn't really matter to me when I get up to the tournament, because it's still the same motion that I've practiced. I don't think that these 3 in my hand are really affecting me making those putts. And I think that I can say that now that I actually have putt 100% from circle 1 in a couple tournaments. One thing that I have noticed, which is, I'm not exactly sure where it fits, and this is kind of where things go into that range of, hey, I kind of know what I'm talking about, but maybe I don't, is I've noticed that one of the things that I've done with my grip that has really helped me to get a little bit more juice when I'm a little farther is, instead of gripping the disc pretty tight here, and that I think can get you a little accuracy and control, I've gripped it much looser. And the looseness of that grip curls these more so that when they pop open, there's even more pop from just them popping open. Instead of, if I was a little tighter, it's a lot harder to pop versus when they're a little bit more curled here. That pop is much more significant. So I've noticed that where it's a little bit looser, everything is looser, and I'm able to putt a little bit farther with a little bit more pop and juice. All right, this rain is really coming. So I want to talk a little bit about step putting and not step putting. We're gonna do it real fast. And then I think we're gonna have to finish the rest of this in the van. I'm just gonna go about 40 feet away. And for me, I do everything straddle. So even from a straddle, one thing that I notice when I step putt is I try to go down and pause for a second and then accelerate through. There, my nose was down because my chest was down. So get the chest up. There we go, much better. It's very similar motion, and I try to step instead of jump and just make it a very minimal motion. Really focusing on the spin, focusing on that pause, focusing on not getting rained on with my camera that has a lens that's not fully weather sealed. But that extra pause helps me to really regenerate a lot of power, but making sure that my chest is up at the basket and then powering through. I tend to do very small steps or jumps unless I'm farther, obviously. And I really focus on getting the spin because the spin is what's gonna keep it in the air, because I don't try to put it on a line that's above the basket. I try to put it on a line that's at the basket. Of course I put it above the basket. One thing that I will say though is before you start doing a lot of practice putting from step putt range, make sure that you're dialed in circle one, especially because in tournaments, if I'm back here and I miss a step putt, okay, but now look at where my comeback putt is. I'm at the basket, 1 step, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got a 25-foot comeback putt instead of just laying it up for an easy birdie. Now for me, I'm pretty confident putting, so I feel like I can make those comebackers. But if you're not confident making those comebackers, I would honestly just lay up under the basket. It's hard to do. Everyone told me to do it too, and I never did it, and then I got worse scores. So if you have the discipline to do it, tons of respect to you, but I recommend not jumping or stepping if you can't make the comebacker. I'm gonna head to 45 feet real fast and show you something that I've been working on. Is right here. I try to take everything that I've already told you guys about, even going a little bit lower to generate more power, and really focusing on using all of my levers the best that they can. So everything needs to be very loose. I go low, stop, pop up, and that's how I make 45 footers without stepping, because you want both of those. You want to be able to make them with stepping and without stepping. Let's go. Because there's gonna be different times where all those, if I miss those, they're staying close to the basket. And this is something that I saw in Isaac Robinson video that he did with Disc God yesterday, I think. He won't actually step putt unless he's outside of 40 feet, and that was outside of 40 feet, that was 45. And he won't do it unless he's outside of 40 feet or if there's a low ceiling. And that's because you need to power through, and the power that you get from the jump putt is much more significant than if you were to just straight up putt. And next week, I am gonna have a video come out about how to practice putting better and not make it boring. But one thing that I would totally recommend is to be making 50% of your putts before you move on. I would honestly do more than that. So like at 15 feet, I really am trying to make sure that I am making every single putt. If I miss a putt, I need to diagnose why I missed the putt. That one I missed because I aimed left side because I wanted to miss a putt for the video. But diagnosing why I'm missing the putt is really important. There's so much that goes into putting. There's so much that goes into this rain right now. But just getting out there and experimenting with your putt to figure out what works for you with everything that we talked about is going to be so helpful. That's how I've been comfortable not stepping 35 to 45 footers. And before, I didn't think I could get it to the basket from about 30 feet. Luckily, I basically talked about most things that I want to talk about. There's one more thing that oh my gosh, couldn't explain that. We're gonna have to explain it again. Oh, baby. One last major thing is putting in tournaments, and how I was able to go from missing like the first putt every time to now being pretty confident when I step onto the green. And a lot of that honestly had to do with just making more putts in tournaments, because the more that you play tournaments, the more confident you're gonna be going to your next tournament and playing well there. But it's also how you set your expectations. Because if you expect to make every single putt inside the circle, it's gonna be a lot harder for you when you miss. And that's actually what happened to me. I really wanted my last tournament to have a 100% inside the circle putting performance. And so I did that in the first round. Getting to the second round, made my first putt 20 feet uphill. Second putt was 30 feet slightly downhill, and I hit the pole. Didn't even give it a chance. And in my head, I was like, oh, that sucks. There goes my round of not getting a perfect round putting. And because of that, over the next 6 holes, I missed 2 more inside the circle putts. No, I missed 3 more inside the circle putts. And those 4 putts would have tied me with the lead even if I didn't throw any better and I was not throwing well that day. But if you're going into your first tournament, expect, it's hard to say, but expect that you will miss putts in the back of your head. Not in the front of your head, because then you'll be like, okay, I'm gonna miss this putt. But if you realize that missing putts is a part of literally everybody's tournament, it's still a spectacle when people on the Pro Tour go 100% inside the circle putting, because it's that hard to putt 100% from inside the circle. So you know that you will miss some putts. So when you miss the putt, just regroup, make sure that you figure out your routine, think about how your body feels when you make a good putt, step up to the next putt, get your aim point, try not to think about it, relax your body, make your putt. Okay, now we're gonna go rapid fire through all the Instagram questions. Best way to deal with days you just feel weak putting. To me, if it's like a tournament then obviously you have to deal with it. If it's not a tournament, I would just stop putting or move in, especially if it's just practicing. This is what I always do. Today, I only practiced from like 20 and 25 feet because I was very tired, and I have been practicing almost exclusively from 25 to 40 feet. So I didn't want to go all the way back there because I'd be missing more putts, and I want to practice making putts, not practice missing putts. In a tournament, the best way that I would deal with it if you feel weak is making sure that you relax so that you can get that extra spin and cocking your wrist. A lot of it in weak putting, I don't think it necessarily comes down to power. It comes down to spin, in my opinion, unless you're just straight up a push putter, but I don't know a lot of people who are just straight up push putters right now. When putting from further distances, you need more height, more power, or both. I personally don't think more height. I think it's more spin from further distances, power and spin, finding that combination, but I think spin is the first thing that you should worry about. And I think that is all the questions, so definitely go check out my last Project 100 video right over here. It talks a lot about how to get more snap, feel a bit better. Make sure you're doing your putts, do your non-disc golf workouts, and don't be like me, do your field workouts, people. Subscribe so that we can get to 9,000 by the end of the day and add 900 putts to the live stream. Okay, I appreciate you guys. Hopefully this helped. Please let me know if it didn't or if it did, and other things that you want talked about, because I just want to share my journey and everything that I'm learning so that you guys can get better too, and I can be corrected in the comments if I'm doing something wrong, but not if my opinions are wrong, because they can't be. Even your opinions are right, even when I say that they're wrong. Okay, love you, bye.